Uh, this comes in stages. Any discipline that you're going to practice and any commandment that you're going to teach people how to do, you want to have general teaching in your congregation. And then the congregation will sort itself out. This is my experience. Some people will say, I don't want to go there. You find people who, if you had a pill that they could take and never more be angry, they wouldn't take the pill. See, they're wedded to it. So if you say, well, let's lay aside anger, you're asking them to lay aside a primary instrument by which they negotiate life. So you teach. Now you teach, people are not, many of them are just going to want to memorize Scripture to memorize Scripture. So you present it in the context of what that does for them. And then some of them are going to say, I'm ready for that. And some of them you can deal with individually, but I would always press for a group, because they do encourage one another and they learn better in a group. You don't have to have a large group, 3 or 4 people, and let's say that they decide they would like to memorize. Don't start them on the Sermon on the Mount, it'll kill them. So, start them on something, 1 Corinthians 13 is great to start on. Or one of the parables of Jesus or something of that. Because many of them need to know they can do this. And you teach them that you memorize, that 3 things involved more or less in memorization: repetition, concentration, understanding. And if you don't have those 3, it's going to be hard. Some things you'll memorize just by understanding them. You have memorized many things that way, but probably not a long passage. So there you need repetition, but if you don't have concentration, your repetition will not do as much good. Now, you actually can memorize just by repetition, because in the end it becomes a bodily habit and it comes out of your body. But it's not best to do it that way. Repetition, concentration, understanding, those 3 things. So you lead people through that. And then you can use, there are some very good resources on this. There's an organization of long-standing called Bible Memory Association. Any of you know that? It is a set-up program of memorization with little booklets. And what you do is you have groups in church. Unfortunately, it's often done just for young people. That's wonderful, but old people need it too. And then you have people in the church who hear the recitation, if you wish, of the passage or the verse at set times, like every 2 weeks or a month or whatever. And it's very nicely organized. The only drawback that I see to it is the passages are not long enough. And I want to tell you, you can't get the benefit just by memorizing verses. It just doesn't work that way. And when you try it, you'll see why that is. So I think the passages, some of the passages at least, should be longer. And you might want to select different passages because of the profundity of that particular passage. So that's the sort of thing I would work on. As I said in one of my books, I think, and it comes back to me often, I would not pastor a church that did not have a memorization program and leading people into that. Young people, tend to memorize and remember what they memorize forever. Not perfectly, perhaps, but they will know it's there somehow. And so that's very important. But everyone needs to be memorizing, and that's a primary way that you renew your mind. Because when you memorize, that becomes a part of what you think of and how you think about it, those 2 things. So that's a little bit
Thank you.
That.
We're over here first. It sounds like what you memorized as a young person was the KJV.
Yes, that's why
Maybe you still use it today.
Well, it almost always comes out in King James for me, because...
Please.
I have a really practical question for you. Some of us have had interactions, say with youth groups that were part of quizzing teams or whatever. And maybe we've known kids who could memorize, they had memorized the Gospel of John and the book of Acts, and they could answer some question immediately, and they couldn't wait to use their quizzing opportunities as ways to show off, and then they couldn't wait to leave those quizzing activities to go act immorally. It didn't seem like it was anything close to sort of an automatic, you get a lot of scripture memory, and then it just works this way. So, just bluntly, what's going on there in your estimation, or what's missing maybe?
Let me say something, and you see if I'm right about the cases you know. These are cases where memorization is not tied to character development.
Yep.
And usually these are situations where people have a high view of Scripture, and that's wonderful, but they think just on the basis of holding a high view of Scripture, they should memorize. I myself don't think that that's helpful. I think what you have before you is, I am first a disciple of Jesus. As a disciple, my life is organized around character transformation, and Scripture memorization can be a way of assisting that. Not necessary. Again, it's very important because often you have young people, perhaps older people, who come to think that memorization is righteousness. And you have just brought forth a brilliant illustration of why it's not, right? And so anytime a discipline is tilted in the direction of self-righteousness or superiority, then something has gone wrong and you need to practice some other disciplines. Like, for example, an excellent discipline for this kind of pride is service, and especially serving people you don't think are worthy. And young people can learn a lot from that. And you can tell them about Jesus washing the feet of the disciples and give them the meaning of that, and help them to serve. And serving other people is a wonderful way of curing the attitude of superiority.